Welcome back to the Foolery Show. I'm Sam.
And I'm Tim.
Two cynics desperately trying to find the positive side to things. Today we're talking about charities. So I think a lot of people like the idea of donating to charity, and the idea of donating to charity makes people feel good because they're technically donating money to help a cause. But I think that charity people should be very suspicious of donating money to charity because of the known costs. Like, you don't exactly know where your money is going to. Also, you don't exactly know how much it costs to send money. And I feel like that is one of the core problems with sending money, because you don't actually know what's going on, and they don't necessarily have to support what they say they do.
Yeah, so I agree that you should be suspicious of where you're putting your money, especially when it comes to charities. But there are ways to vet charities. Usually, charities have websites that say what their mission statement and ways to contact them. There's also a metric. I forgot what the name of the metric is, but it's basically each dollar you donate, what percentage of that dollar is actually going towards the charity's cause. For example, like 30 cents of the dollar goes to the charity or whatever. I think the Red Cross apparently is pretty good for this metric, but that's also one way you can assess whether a charity is kind of worthy of giving your money to. So you can donate to charity in a wiser fashion.
Well, yeah, but then how public is this number? Granted, my nature is to be skeptical, but how truthful can this number be, right? How true does it have to be, right? If they said 100% goes to the actual thing, they're lying, right? Because there's always
I don't think anyone says 100%. Yeah,
right, you can't. There's no one believe you, and anyone that knows anything about money is no one gonna believe you. But like, what does this mean? Let's say they say 60%. The 60%, 60 cents on the dollar, everything go to the cause, and what does it go to support? I feel like when I pay for services, well, I don't necessarily know where that money goes. There's some understanding of trading cause. With charity, it's kind of just a rat hole of unknowing. Just it goes down there. Unless I do it myself, I feel like I can't know, and it would be very suspicious of anyone said that they could easily know.
so I'm not super clear on the metric and like how it's enforced and where it comes from and stuff. I assume there are regulations and stuff around it. But for example, public companies, like you can see their balance sheets and the revenues and where their money is going. So I assume for a nonprofit organization like a charity, the books, the accounting books should be even more accessible and available than companies. So I feel like there should be a way to vet that number. I don't think it's an arbitrary number that they put out and you just have to um, accept it. But I mean, yes, I mean there are the ways to fudge with accounting and stuff like that. But I think in general, like I mean, it depends on how much public scrutiny there is, which we don't know. But they're assuming that it's sufficient, then I mean we can kind of justify that number. Like if it's in their books that says like for the Red Cross, like this much money went to funding supplies for Haiti, that's pretty clear that that's for their cause and not for like going to some administrator's salary.
I guess as far as public scrutiny goes, yes, you're right. As far as we can go into, we can see supplies given to a certain country. If we're supporting a certain country, we want to support a certain country. We say supplies to that country, and I think that's as far as you realistically. On the flip side, how many times will you do that? How reasonable is it to ask all my charitable contributions? I need to vet them thoroughly. It seems kind of ridiculous to expect me to have to go to that length to know.
I agree. That's too much for any one individual person. I assume there are watchdog organizations that probably do this already. Hopefully, if there isn't, there should be one, right? That vet charities and look at how they spend their money and stuff like that. It should definitely, or maybe even like a government agency, right, that's responsible for this. So there should be some organizational or systemic oversight. It's not up to the individual person to vet every charity that they want to donate to.
It's kind of ridiculous, and then it goes on to say, then it makes me question even like the concept of it, right? Giving charity is the kind of concept of giving money away to hopefully those people that need it. And there's always these causes. I know one of the most notable ones that they spammed on TV was, giving Christian kids food or something in Africa. And, it's like, but how much of that money goes there? And then more importantly perhaps that is, how are you helping them? You know, like let's bring up the whole clause of supplies, right? Okay, we're sending the supplies to Africa. Let's say we have a charity, arbitrary charity, that sends food to schools in Africa to feed them. So let's say you did see this line on some tax return. Yeah, they send money to some food in Africa. How is that? How is that done? How is that administered? You know, what is their process behind it? And furthermore, is that something that's really effective at helping people? It
So
almost seems like you might have a better approach at supporting some kind of, economical structure there rather than donating money there, to some of these causes.
and the charity is the economical structure, right? Or what do you think is a better alternative than charity?
Well, I mean, maybe this is the capitalist in me. Maybe this is the capitalist American approach. It's entirely possible. But maybe supporting an industry there that produces something that they need.
Or like setting up a company in Africa that maybe employs them and provides money to them like that.
So people need food. That's what I'm hearing when I hear, on some charity is providing food, right? So they need food. So yes, if they're starving and they need food, yes, we should give them food. I don't want to distract from that. But also, why do they need food? What's going on? Right? There's something wrong with the whole economical process to why these people are starving in the first place. And maybe we should work to help remedy that situation rather than just kind of, hey, let's put a band-aid on the problem.
I'm not too familiar with African politics and the whole situation there, but I would assume it's not a straightforward issue to why kids are starving and stuff like that. It's not a matter of, it's not a very simple solution that you can just directly solve. Probably it's a very complicated issue, right? Take poverty in the US. If there was a straightforward solution to solve poverty, I mean, I think we would have done it by now. But the reality is it's a very complicated issue with many different facets and nuance that we can't just very easily just solve the root cause. It's a lot easier to, or what's the most immediate action we can take is solving the symptom by providing shelters and rehabilitation and other stuff. But to actually fix the actual cause of poverty is quite difficult. So I think charities allow for a way for you to provide some immediate assistance and relief when the actual cause of why they're starving and stuff may not be so easy.
So do you think that, the rise of charities and the rise of people giving money to these charities allows governments and other things to take more time on fixing the core problems?
So I mean, it's hard to say if the government will ever actually fix the core problem. Like I know in Africa, some territories are probably ruled by African warlords and stuff like that. I mean, the government in the U.S. it's arguable whether they're taking action to actually solve poverty. But the failures of government doesn't mean there's no need for charities anymore. In fact, maybe it means we need charities even more because there's no other way that these people are going to get help.
Wouldn't you say that the availability of charity money or the availability of applicability of these, let's say someone identifies a certain issue, collects money for charity, and fixes this, right? Then maybe that allows our politicians or the government or the local community to do nothing about it.
You're saying the
Granted, I
charity would.
agree that I don't want people to starve to death, right? I don't want people to starve to death. But at the same time, if there seems to be some kind of food issue to where people aren't getting enough food, with enough sufficient charity lines, you never have to fix the problem. Or maybe with let's we can move off food. If we're giving charity support to some kind of impoverished area, and let's say this impoverished area has serious issues that need to be remedied. But provided that charity money keeps coming in and it's beneficial to the community, the greater community never has to deal with it.
Yeah, or maybe the great community even suffers, right? Like I remember reading a long while ago, some organization donated money, free food to some area in Africa or something, and then the cause of that was that it caused local food providers to kind of not be able to make any money because all the citizens, all the people were just relying on the free food from charities, right? And then they were actually buying food from local food providers, so that caused like farmers to be in trouble and stuff. So definitely charities can be quote unquote too beneficial or it can cause more harm in trying to do good. So yes, it depends on how it's done. So that kind of comes back to the oversight of the charity. And obviously hard for us to know what's actually happening on the ground and stuff. But I guess it just shows that it just highlights that we need more oversight. But it is tough to know, right? What kind of effects are happening. I mean, these are complex issues and stuff. But I mean, to
Yeah,
say that we should do nothing because something bad might come out of it. I mean, how often does something good happen out of a charity versus something bad?
I guess that's true. I guess I don't know that number, but I would hope that it would definitely be plus, and I would be willing to say that it's more positive than negative. I think I would say that. Um, but I think one of the issues I have with it is it kind of enables things. It allows things to go unfixed or kind of unremedied. For example, right, charity doesn't necessarily have to go from a direct charity standpoint, right? It can even be applicable to something along the lines of charity the U.S. government hands out,
I
right?
mean, what kind of charity does the U.S. government hand out?
All right. Well, it's along the lines of welfare, right?
I mean, do you consider
Some sort of
welfare to be
assistance
charity?
of a sort, a social charity network.
Mm,
The people that need it most, the people that are in these issues, they're in troubled areas and they need assistance.
right,
And
but
I think that that's a good thing. I do think it's a good thing. I don't think that that kind of social welfare charity program is a bad thing. But I think what it enables is something, some large companies, for example, like Amazon can just or Walmart can just kind of actively not pay their workers enough to live because they don't need to.
I mean, I assume we're talking about like public housing that are being provided to these workers. Even if the government didn't provide that housing, I don't think Amazon would pay or Walmart would pay these workers more. They will probably just pay for temporary housing, maybe, but they're not going to necessarily increase the workers' pay just to ensure that they can, they're going to take the cheapest option.
You think that any kind of enforcement or push wouldn't really be useful in this area because it's not really going to make them happen.
I think just not helping the workers is not going to incentivize the companies to do more to help the workers.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not necessarily the most conservative in this area either, right? The trickle down effects just simply don't work. Giving companies benefits doesn't necessarily mean they'll give them to your workers.
Right. Or they're going to do the very bare minimum, right?
But the flip side, if you help out the individual workers, it almost encourages the companies, to do less. And I feel like the same can be applicable with charities and government. The more charity it gives, almost the less the government has to really care about it.
Well, it depends on the cause, right? I would say it's on a case by case basis. For example, there is one charity that raises money to give children in hospitals toys and video games.
Okay.
I don't think one there is any bad side to giving children toys and video games in hospitals, but I think two, neither is there really an economic incentive or even a real social incentive for the government to do that. So I think this is a good example of how a charity might step in and fill this role that might otherwise go unheeded.
Got it. So you're saying that some charities fill the role when they're just missed. And
Exactly. It's not,
I,
like if the charities didn't raise money for video games and toys for kids in hospitals, I don't think the government is going to step in to do that.
and I guess, do you feel that maybe that is a core reason we should support charities so they can fill the gaps where the government or society or things miss?
Right. I think that's one of the reasons, right? Like, I think if you take the sphere of influence of the government and what it should be responsible for, and you take all the needs that are out there that are covered by charities, it's not an exact overlap, right? Like, the government can fulfill all of its duties that it needs to, but then there are still a lot of other stuff that can be done to make things better. There's an argument to be made, well, whether government should spend funds for toys for children in hospital, but I mean, the government has a lot of other things that it needs to take care of financially, right? I don't necessarily think that would be a core thing that they would spend money on, as opposed to like maybe veteran benefits or something like that. So this is a good way for charities to step in and supplement that.
I see. Kind of assisting on the gaps. I mean, then that's great. I think that's a great thing to aspire to. But I guess, how do you feel about them playing a greater role in economies or in, like, nonprofits, or along the lines of assisting larger things? Like, for example, you brought up the Red Cross, right? Red Cross is one of the biggest. I mean, I've donated blood to the Red Cross, right? And I
That's not by
assume that's being used appropriately, of course. And I've
right.
chosen, but I don't necessarily know. And I mean, maybe there's a greater question. At some level, shouldn't the government be doing what the Red Cross is doing instead of the Red Cross doing what the Red Cross is doing?
I mean, yeah, that's a good point. I mean, ideally, yes, right? Ideally, the government would be doing so many things that we wouldn't need charities, but realistically, the government is not even able to do all the things it needs to do that we might consider the bare minimum today. And so, I mean, let's say the government was to do something like that. I mean, I don't know if I would trust that my taxes are necessarily going to that cause. Whereas for a charity, I can kind of direct my funds more directly to a cause that I care about. But yeah, I mean, I think you do have to be careful about charities playing too large of a role. Charities can definitely be abused for tax purposes, tax evasion. The money could be going to the wrong place with the wrong overhead. So you have to be careful about that. But I would say it's kind of the role of maybe investigative journalism and government government oversight and watchdog agencies to kind of make sure that these charities are functioning properly.
Yeah, so it's almost funny that you feel that, and I think that a lot of people, other people feel that, like, hey, I want to donate to a charity. So let's say I don't, the government's trying to support, I don't know, we're trying to protect apple plantations, and we're I don't believe that. So I want to take my money, I want to donate to the place where I feel fit. And we actually trust charities more than the government. And I think that's pretty impressive. I mean, you're trusting a private company who, by definition, has to make money, by the way.
Well, they're nonprofits, though, aren't they?
Well, even if they're nonprofits, everyone's got to get paid, right?
Everyone's got to get paid. But the difference between making sure everyone gets paid and to keep the lights on than making a profit. Right?
I mean, it's true, but then you can just donate the profit to.
I mean, sure. Then you're acting in bad faith, sure, but it's not the purpose of the charity to make money for its stockholders and to increase its stock price.
I suppose that's correct.
Obviously, it could be taken over and compromised, and maybe some administrator, whoever, is stealing funds or siphoning funds. But that's not legally. It's not supposed to be like that.
But do you think that's kind of a more of this has become a part of a thing because just distrust of the government and people see these things? Maybe even social media has a role in kind of showing these problems existing. I guess charities came out before social media, but more of these real issues coming up just from like news and kind of the government not doing anything that makes us feel that the government's not doing their job and we turn to private companies.
America has always had a sentiment of distrust of the government, and definitely in the news you constantly see the government failing its people. Like we had Jon Stewart go in front of Congress to plead for more funding for the 9/11 first responders. So definitely there's an easy sense, it's really easy to get a sense of the government is failing us. And we don't know where our tax money is going. Government excess spending on the military, right? Everyone knows that. So while charities is like, obviously the public perception of charities is better, there hasn't really been that many public scandals about charities, I think. Probably there could be more critique of charities and how they spend their money for sure. But yeah, I think public perception of charities are definitely a lot better than the government.
Got it. And so I guess maybe it's of the opinion that we should understand charities and be skeptical of charities because we should be skeptical about wherever we send money. But maybe also on the same idea that we shouldn't feel bad for not donating, but also know that these whole things were constructed because there is a need that's just not being satisfied by any other players. But at the same time, we don't think that charities are necessarily the solution to the problem because they simply, alleviate the current symptoms rather than fixing the underlying issues. So it's not exactly, the overarching fix to a problem, but it alleviates a current situation, which would be made much worse if we didn't supply it.
Well, I suppose it just depends where you draw the line.
But isn't that always how it is? Thanks for listening. Like, subscribe, and let us know what we should talk about next.